Hello, my name is Sriram Balasubramanian and I am the InterBase Engineering Team Lead here at Embarcadero. Thank you all for joining in to the InterBase product address. We are excited to give you an update on where InterBase is today and where we are going to take InterBase in the coming years. InterBase, as you all know, has been around for a long time, and we have a very extensive customer base who focus on developing feature-rich applications with an embedded database. To that, InterBase has a long history of providing a lot of developer-friendly features so developers can focus on application development and leave the task of managing data to InterBase, both at development time as well as deployment. The obvious question to address if you're a new potential customer or a developer looking at InterBase from the outside in, why would you choose InterBase? Well, there are many factors, of course, but there are a few that you should be aware of. InterBase focus is to provide developers with a powerful tool for building data-centric applications. The result is a very robust, full-featured, ANSI-compliant data server that supports most popular development languages, including Delphi, C++, Java, .NET, PHP, Ruby, and many others. InterBase is high performance, scalable, and provides the security features needed to protect sensitive data and help customers meet compliance obligations. InterBase is also self-managing, requiring near zero administration, and it has a very small footprint, which means there's more capacity on a system for application functionality. InterBase is a relational database that truly doesn't get in the way of applications. Along with that, we are going to be looking into how InterBase makes this offering possible to you as a customer. One of our core values in InterBase is to provide a cross-platform so that you are not tied in to a particular OS platform. When we mention cross-platform, obviously we are very well in tune with the latest platform releases and the most popular operating system platforms out there for you to address potential customers. InterBase supports all of the RAD IDE platforms that Embarcadero RAD Studio supports. In our latest release of InterBase, we support Windows 8 along with all the older Windows operating system releases. InterBase also natively supports other operating system platforms. Mac OS X Mountain Lion, which was just released this year, also has been certified for InterBase XE3 along with older Mac OS X operating system releases. InterBase has multiple editions and platform support. Here, we take a quick look at what editions are supported on what releases of the operating systems. Developer Edition is available as a free download, just as you would also have Trial Editions is available as a free download. The Developer Edition is available for each platform. As a developer, you can go to the Embarcadero download site and download the Developer Edition for free. Please note that there are some platforms which are still on InterBase XE, which was released a couple of years ago, as noted on this slide. InterBase XE3 has been released this year for Windows, and for To-Go Edition, we also have released it for Mac OS X. Let's go a little bit deeper into what each one of these editions allow you to do and enable you to do with your applications. The first one which is of primary importance to us, is a developer edition. As a developer focused on application development, and that too database application development, we provide you with a developer edition that is freely available for using it with any developer IDE out there. We also provide the developer edition packaged into the RAD Studio XE3 release, so you have it along with the IDE of your choice. The developer edition is a fully featured version of InterBase XE3, and it allows you to develop both local database applications as well as client-server database applications. InterBase Server Edition is the primary edition that is used when you deploy your applications. Of course, you can choose to deploy it with other InterBase editions also, which we'll take a look in a moment. InterBase Server Edition allows you to create amazingly fast small to medium enterprise server solutions. It's primarily focused on multi-user and network-based applications. You can become a ISV, OEM, or VAR and get discount pricing for bulk licensing. Desktop Edition allows you to build these applications with a focus on standalone applications being deployed to a single desktop. The desktop server does not allow you to have remote applications connect to the desktop server, but it is more for applications that are running on the same machine. Volume discounting is available for desktop edition deployment also. Please note that desktop application is only available on Windows, whereas server edition is available on Windows as well as Unix platforms. To-go edition has been a more recent edition for us for the last 4 years or so. To-go edition allows you to embed a database engine in your application in such a way that you would not have to install a database server product on the system. The database engine runs within the application process, thereby giving you complete control on its lifecycle. With InterBase XE3, To-Go Edition is also included in your RAD Studio XE3 install. We provide a test deployment license for RAD Studio users, so you can deploy your application for testing from within the IDE using the test deployment license. To-Go Edition, just as desktop or server editions, allow you to get volume discounting if you become an Embarcadero VAR. Now let's take a look at where InterBase XE3 is supported to make your database application development easier and for you to use productivity tools to design and develop your database applications. InterBase has been a developer-friendly database right since we first included it in the Delphi release, Delphi 1.0 release that came out about 17 years ago. Since then, our focus has been to provide Delphi and C++ developers a feature-rich database that can be used to prototype your applications, and when it comes time to deploy, you have the flexibility to deploy your database onto a Windows platform or a platform of your choice that InterBase supports. With InterBase XE3, as mentioned earlier, we also provide the test deployment license that can be obtained for free if you are a RAD Studio XE3 user. RAD Studio XE3 IDE has been enhanced to provide a more integrated InterBase functionality for you to develop and test your applications. When you install RAD Studio XE3, you will notice an optional install of InterBase XE3 along with your IDE. If you choose to install InterBase along with your RAD Studio XE3 release, you will be presented with InterBase Server, Developer, as well as To-Go Edition binaries. From within the IDE, you can choose to deploy your application to either a Windows 32-bit operating system or a Windows 64-bit operating system of your choice if you have those machines around for testing your application. You can also choose to bundle and deploy your database application with InterBase packaged in it to your OS X 32 platform. Traditionally, InterBase has supported Unix platforms also as a first tier, in that even though you might notice only Windows and Mac OS X from your RAD Studio IDE as deployment platforms, you can also choose to deploy the InterBase database server on your Linux or Solaris operating systems if you have multi-user applications that are better suited to have a database server for those productivity and scalability needs. There are a few reasons why InterBase is developer friendly, and it might be the best choice for you to build your database applications. InterBase has traditionally been tightly integrated with not just the IDE tools from within Borland and Embarcadero, but we have also gathered tight integration with Embarcadero database tools such as Rapid SQL, ER Studio, and DB Change Manager. With the release of RAD Studio XE3, HTML5 builder and PHP development is also easy with InterBase XE3. As a database application developer, you might choose to put your business logic in database stored procedures, triggers, and utilizing the feature-rich user-defined functions in the database product to keep your applications enabled with rich features for your end users. As a developer, your interest is in focusing on building your application to suit your customers' needs, in that you might have a variety of applications wanting to access the data at the back end. We provide open, standards-based, and custom database connectivity from within RAD Studio for you to connect with InterBase. RAD Studio developers can use the built-in Database Express components, or IBX, which is InterBase Express, from your Delphi and C++ builder applications. These two component sets, DB Express and IBX, are natively tied in to use InterBase, and they are custom components from Embarcadero for RAD Studio, Delphi, and C++ builder users. InterBase also provides open standards connectivity drivers to address the needs of developers using other IDE tools such as Visual Studio and Eclipse to connect with InterBase using ODBC, JDBC for Java, and ADO.NET drivers for .NET application development. One of the introductions of InterBase over the past 5 years has been to address the problem of data security. InterBase has taken an approach to provide database encryption and data encryption facilities from end to end, all the way from your application to the data that's resident in the database file. Security is paramount to you as an application developer when your application is deployed to your customer site. InterBase addresses security at multiple levels. Traditionally, SQL user authentication and SQL level security with grant and revoke access within the database has been a hallmark of every database vendor. Recently, InterBase added and enhanced support for security from data security encryption, and we also provide both weak and strong encryption, DES and AES encryption as it is known in the field. This data encryption is now provided both at the database level if you choose to enable the whole database file for encryption, or you can selectively choose certain columns and tables to provide column level security where performance is a high necessity. You can choose to encrypt sensitive data within your database using any set of encryption keys to suit your needs. An encryption key can be associated either with the database at large, or you can associate separate encryption keys as your security policies require to specific columns within the database. A special database security owner called SysDSO, or Data Security Officer, can administer the encryption policies for your deployed database. Standards such as PCI DSS for the payment card industry require strong encryption of data and user accounts. InterBase XE3 provides both data encryption for the database level and column level, and also a stronger encryption for your user passwords within the database. XE3 also allows you to encrypt your database backup files when you archive a database for maintenance. You can rest assured that your database backup file is not vulnerable for someone to break in if you use it as an encrypted database backup file. For network communication between client and server, where you have multi-user applications targeting a remote database server, the InterBase client allows you to connect to your InterBase server using industry standard secure socket layer, or SSL TLS as it is better known. We utilize and embed the OpenSSL implementation, which is the industry-leading implementation of SSL. InterBase is very excited to address the growing needs of the mobile application development space. In the coming year, in 2013, we are planning to provide InterBase for your applications that you might want to deploy onto these mobile operating systems. RAD Studio, as you know, has been enabling application developers to deploy applications from within RAD Studio to iOS platform. And there are plans to adopt even better platforms in the coming year. InterBase will provide the to-go edition as a choice for database application developers to embed InterBase within their applications and target not only the desktop operating systems such as Windows and Mac OS X, but also allow your applications to be deployed with a database that is embedded with your application onto the mobile operating systems such as iOS and Android in the coming year. As a database application developer using RAD Studio, you should be able to develop on Windows and choose any one of these platforms to deploy an InterBase embedded application. The database connectivity components that we plan to support in the upcoming InterBase on mobile platforms includes DB Express and the aforementioned IBX or InterBase Express. The release expected in 2013 is planned to be in sync with the RAD Studio release in the same year, addressing these mobile platforms. Let's take a brief look at the scalability offerings from InterBase. You might all be aware that database servers are expected to provide increasing scalability with every release. To that, InterBase is a performant database server for both your embedded application as well as addressing the multi-user performance requirements of your database application. With InterBase XE3, we have now enabled InterBase to address the 64-bit address space on Windows. we have a 64-bit edition that you can choose to deploy with your database application. There is no change required in your application to make this possible. If you have a 32-bit application wanting to connect to a 64-bit server on your network, you can do so without making any change to your application. You can start with Windows 32-bit and InterBase 32-bit edition and choose to grow into using InterBase 64-bit edition on Windows. A 64-bit platform provides better scalability on many fronts. You can choose to increase InterBase use in your network for multiple users. You can choose to have a database resident in memory as per your needs. A database size can also grow on disk, but more of your data can be cached in memory. InterBase XE3 allows you to pack more data compactly within the database by providing you to store billions of records per table. InterBase XE3 also has been certified to run on your Amazon EC2 cloud instance should you choose to have your application deployed to that platform. You can use over-the-wire secure socket layer communication to have your desktop applications communicating with an InterBase server running on an Amazon EC2 instance. At the low end, InterBase scales equally well to address your application needs when it is embedded in your application. It's very small footprint database that adds approximately 3 megabytes or so to your application deployment needs. InterBase To Go edition is available on Windows and Mac OS X, so you can choose to deploy your applications from within RAD Studio XE3 to these two platforms. Once you are done with developing your application, when it comes time to deploy, InterBase is one of the best databases for deployment. We ease your deployment by letting you package InterBase with your application. You can choose to deploy the database that you have built during development, the database file that is, to any of the platforms that's supported by RAD Studio XE3 for deployment. In that, your application can be packaged with the database file and deployed directly to your Windows, Mac OS X platforms today with InterBase XE3, and in the coming year you'll be able to package the same database file to be deployed to the mobile operating system platforms. We highly recommend that you become a value-added reseller or a VAR customer if you choose to deploy InterBase with your applications. You can contact your local sales office from Embarcadero to get VAR discount pricing. Once you have deployed your application with InterBase, InterBase is self-tuning and a very small footprint database, as mentioned earlier, that requires near to no administration. But there are times when you have deployed your application within the intranet and your multi-user needs keep growing. In those cases, you might want to use the InterBase Performance Monitor to monitor, isolate, stop, and fix problem queries for your users. You might also want to use the InterBase Performance Monitor while you are developing the application, so you know your application and InterBase are best suited and ready to address scalability requirements in the field. When you build and deploy your applications, InterBase comes with a silent install that you can embed from within your application, so the end user may not or need not be aware that InterBase is used with the application. This keeps the ease of deployment for you and lets you focus on your application development instead. There are a few notable updates that I wanted to mention with regard to InterBase XE3. With XE3, we have introduced a new 64-bit ODBC driver edition for InterBase database users on Windows. You can use the reporting tools, the ODBC reporting tools of your choice if they have 64-bit editions available, along with the InterBase ODBC driver for 64-bit, and connect to your databases to generate new reports. InterBase also provides a 32-bit ODBC driver that's packaged along with the product for your deployment and development needs. Please be aware that we are working to address a few issues with our upcoming XE3 Update 1, and we are currently in beta. If you choose to and want to test the beta offerings, please go to beta.embarcadero.com and sign up for the InterBase XE3 Update 1 beta. We look forward to your feedback and hope you have a wonderful experience with InterBase. Thank you.
Yeah, let's see here. So I will ask you the first question, actually, which relates to your last slide in that recording. It was pre-recorded a while back, so and same for the Delphi conference, actually. So I was just wondering, the XE3 Update 1 for InterBase that you were referring to, did that ship with the XE3 RAD Studio XE3 Update 1 on Monday?
Yes, it did. So the Update 1, InterBase XE3 Update 1 has been released for public consumption, both via our Code Central downloads for InterBase, as well as in the update that went out with RAD Studio last week.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any functionality differences between InterBase Server and InterBase To Go?
Yes, there is. There are certain features that are more relevant to a server edition than to an embedded edition like To Go. All of the differences are actually documented. If you go to our docs.embarcadero.com webpage, there is a specific guide called as To Go Quick Start Guide. And the To Go Quick Start Guide details the differences between the To Go edition versus a server-based product like desktop.
Okay. Where did you say I should go?
So if you go to docs.embarcadero.com/products/interbase,
okay,
and you can click on the HTML for To Go Quick Start.
Okay.
And you will notice that this particular picture, if you go to using the To Go edition, that's one of those. And can you go to the introduction, please?
Introduction, right here, yeah.
Yeah, so comparing To Go and InterBase, so the first item to the first sub-item to the left.
Okay.
So this details all the features that are not available in To Go, but it's available in desktop, and thereby it's also available in server.
Thank you very much. What's the memory footprint for InterBase? How does it change when InterBase is running and processing SQL?
Well, we have a very small footprint to start with. A lot of our embedded application developers choose InterBase for one of these values, of course. And whether you're using, I think the answer would differ between if you're using To Go edition versus a server edition. If you're using To Go edition, since To Go is running inside your application process, you will see an increased consumption for your process, for your application process itself, anywhere ranging from 4 megabytes and up. And 4 megabytes is a minimum in terms of the threads that need to be stored, the system threads that need to be stored to handle your database requests inside your application for To Go edition. If you have a large database cache defined for your database, then as
the data is loaded into your application process via the to-go edition, your process will consume a lot more virtual memory than what it started with. Now, if you're using a server edition or a desktop edition of the product, then all of the memory consumption and the virtual memory requirements are passed on to the server, and the server, of course, scales as it gets requests from multiple clients. I mean, to start with, the server has a very similar footprint like a to-go edition. It starts off with about 4 megabytes, and then it keeps growing. Now, you would know, you might already remember this, InterBase supports both 32-bit edition as well as we have a 64-bit edition on Windows for both to-go as well as server. So on a 32-bit process, the InterBase server will, of course, have a limit of 2 gigabytes, which can be extended to a 3 GB or a 4 GB depending upon what your BIOS settings are or what operating system edition you're using. But for a 64-bit edition of the InterBase server process, the sky's the limit. I mean, basically, we don't have a defined limit for 64-bit process. It brings a very big virtual memory addressable space, which might be very relevant to your scalability requirements. So you can have hundreds and thousands of clients connecting to an InterBase 64-bit edition and scale really well.
Excellent. What performance monitoring and profiling tools are available for InterBase, and are they included with InterBase or available separately?
I'm glad to note that InterBase provides some performance monitoring solutions in the product itself. This is back in InterBase 7.x version. We started introducing some performance monitoring criteria, statistics in the product, which you can query through your friendly SQL interface. The server maintains some internal memory structures with information about what clients are connected to, what databases, and how many transactions are currently on in a particular database, what kind of statements are getting executed against the database, what kind of tables have been loaded into a database cache, what kind of store procedures are invoked, and how many times, how often do your tables do certain statements make queries that are stressing the tables by doing natural loads versus using an index. All of this data we have made available via a SQL interface. And you can implement any of these SQL queries to get at this performance data from within your application itself. If you want to use a separate tool to monitor this performance monitoring data, you can use IB Console. IB Console is a graphical user interface that's included in the InterBase release. You can connect to a particular database and just invoke performance monitoring from the IB Console database tab for that particular database. And you can monitor, you can set your refresh intervals to anywhere from 10 seconds to up, and you will get immediate snapshot data of what is happening in the system right at that instant. How many connections are there? How many transactions are currently running? And what kind of transaction modes they're using? You can identify certain queries that are taking a long time, and you can choose to either terminate those queries or those attachments if they happen to be long-running queries which are impacting other clients on the system. So you can do a bunch of cool things with performance monitoring within InterBase, and that's all available from within the product when you get the product.
And are there additional tools available as well, or?
Well, there are not. I'm not aware of any particular performance monitoring tool that's available outside of IB Console. But as I mentioned earlier, all of the data is serviced via SQL interface. So there is no limit to what application can use this information. You can pretty much code this into your application if you wanted to, identify what queries your application is running, what attachments has your application made, if you're basically embedding the InterBase server as part of your deployment to your clients, you can have a separate module with your application to monitor what kind of queries your desktop applications that are connecting to the server are executing, how often they are executing. You can do, the sky's the limit with regard to what you can do with the data. So in that way, it's very extensible. I'm not aware of any specific GUI application that provides a similar interface like what IB Console provides. But as I mentioned, there's no limit to that. There could be any number of applications out there, but I'm not aware of any.
Does InterBase XE3 support Linux and Solaris?
XE3 currently supports for desktop and server edition only on Windows. And for to-go, we support Windows and Mac OS X. For Linux and Solaris, we are still on InterBase XE, and the latest version for that was released with InterBase XE Update 4 around, I would say, around 7 months ago. So that is the latest, greatest. We are working on an update to InterBase XE. We are going to be calling it InterBase XE Update 5, and that would include updating the Linux and Solaris builds to the latest update on InterBase XE right now.
Did you have an ETA for that, or?
It's scheduled for the first quarter.
Okay, great.
So within the next 3 months, yeah. Maybe sooner, but we are working on getting the update out to our InterBase XE customers too.
Okay, perfect. Is it possible to upgrade from, say, a server 10 users to unlimited?
As in, are we? Is the question more specific to? Is it possible to upgrade from an older InterBase version using 10 user licenses to a newer InterBase release to an unlimited user license?
Or possibly if he already has XE3 with 10 users, and then he realizes that he wants to upgrade to unlimited. Maybe that's two questions.
Yeah, so I would encourage you to contact your sales contact within Embarcadero. I'm not privy to the specific details on what the upgrade policy is, but in terms of extending or expanding your usage of InterBase within your organization, we have licensing tools to enable you to do that. You can add on additional user licenses, and in this specific case, I understand it's going from 10 users to unlimited. We don't have an add-on for unlimited going from 10, and I don't know how the pricing works out to accommodate the difference between a 10-user SKU versus an unlimited user SKU. I'm sure your sales representative will be able to provide you with the right details and something that's of clear value to you.
Sounds good. Are there any other additional third-party tools for InterBase that I might need or want to use?
There are, I mean, InterBase, as you know, has been around for nearly 25 years plus. We have a very strong third-party tools community. There are plenty of excellent tools outside of Embarcadero as well as within Embarcadero. Embarcadero tools such as Rapid SQL and Change Manager have first-class support for InterBase, but at the same time, there are native tools out there in the community, many of which you can go to our third-party news groups and find out specific details. But at the same time, I request you to state what kind of problem you are trying to solve or what kind of productivity tools you're looking for, so we can help you, help direct you to those third-party tools providers specifically.
Yeah, and Dave Robinson mentioned Database Workbench, so thank you very much for that. And I will go to our portal here in the background as well, and put that link up as well. How does InterBase handle archiving, encryption, and replication?
So those are three big topics. It might take a long while, but I'll be quick in summary. I would suggest that there have been webinars on two of the three topics. And so let me just take archiving first. So InterBase 2007 introduced functionality for disaster recovery. And that included both short-term journaling as well as journal archiving. Now, journal archiving is what you're alluding to out here, whereby it allows you to define disaster recovery policies within your database. You can set up journals on your local system, which can be applied to a database that can be recovered. If there's a short-term disaster on your system and you have to reboot the system, InterBase instantaneously recovers from the journals automatically. But if you have hardware failures that you would want to recover from on a separate system, you can set up your archiving for your database to store all of the journals on a mapped network drive. And your standby server, which can basically recover from these journals frequently as you set it up to be via scripts. We provide tooling, and we provide service API, which can be included as part of your application. So your application can invoke all of these functionality from within your, by calling InterBase Service API components. You can also alternatively use command line tools like GBAC to recover from journals that are present in a map network drive. And the recovery can be incremental. You can set up your recovery from these journal archives incrementally, so you are quickly up to speed in whenever the disaster strikes. You can be up and running on a different system as quick as your recovery allows you to do, and the recovery can be lockstep with your primary database as frequently as you set it up to be. So that's archiving. Do remember out here that the journals and archives are physical diff files of the database. So you have to be on like systems. You have to be on a Windows. You have to be going from a Windows machine to a Windows machine, or a Linux to a Linux. You cannot combine going from a Windows primary server to a Solaris standby server. The journals are platform dependent in that sense. So please note that, but otherwise journal archiving should address your needs specifically. The second question was about encryption. And in InterBase 2009, we introduced a lot of encryption functionality. Basically, I would say at 3 different levels. The first level of encryption was to provide client-server communication, which is now encrypted using SSL, right? So you can define on your server certain SSL certificates that need to be used by your client applications. It's a simple additional set of options that you provide when you connect to the database. So these are arguments to your database URL from the client, and you now have SSL connection between client and server. That's to encrypt your network communication. The second level of encryption that we have provided is for the database, and you can choose to encrypt the whole database in 2 forms. You can either encrypt it with the weak DES algorithm or the strong AES advanced encryption standard algorithms. So both of these are customizable from a database development perspective. When you develop your database, you can define your database schema to be either strongly or weakly encrypted. And when you deploy, your client applications don't really know that this data is encrypted. The data is encrypted when it's in storage. At the same time, when you make backup copies of those database files using GBAC, your backup files are also encrypted. So you're encrypted at both of those levels. Now, of course, that is for the whole database file. Now, if your database application needs are such that you cannot afford to encrypt the whole database, maybe due to performance constraints, or you have a specific requirement to encrypt one entity within the database, like social security ID or some other sensitive data, and you don't want to encrypt the whole database, you can choose to do that with InterBase now. InterBase provides column-level encryption functionality, and we provide a whole set of SQL management actions that you can implement within the database. These are very easily used, just like your create table calls. You can use create encryption, and you can assign specific encryption keys to columns. And what happens in that case is that InterBase only encrypts those entities that you have requested to be encrypted. And each one of these entities can be encrypted with different strengths. You can choose to use AES 128-bit or 196-bit or 256-bit, 192 or 256-bit. So you can, each one of these strengths, of course, introduce some minimal performance impact. But at the same time, you can choose, the flexibility is in your hands to actually define how your data needs to be encrypted. But we provide both SQL management level commands as well as the flexibility going between database encryption as well as column level encryption within InterBase databases with
Perfect.
both weak and strong. That's
Thank
for
you.
encryption. Well, going to the third subsection about replication, we don't have any specific native replication from within the database engine itself. There are replication tools that are available in our third-party community that works at the application layer. And you might have heard of some of these tools in the past, but I have not been made aware of any new tools that have come in the market. So if there is a specific question on replication, we are always interested in hearing about replication. And going forward, I think synchronization is going to be an important piece of problem for us to resolve and resolve within the product if possible, especially now that we are looking at adopting the mobile operating systems with InterBase 2. So if you have specific requirements on the replication space, please do send your questions along. And we'll be very happy to hear from you, and it will help us direct our efforts to address replication or synchronization going forward.
All right, thank you very much, Sriram.